Hi, and welcome everybody to this Thursday call. And we have covered a lot of topics in the last few weeks. And I just thought we will have a quick run on the various topics that we have covered, which will take care of trying to move ahead beyond this. So, we've gone through passions, beliefs, visions, the big why, the 12-year basics, ikigai, mutual trust and respect, goals, tactics, and last week we did visualization, and through that we did visioning. So I thought of taking this a step ahead into something related to conflict management. And conflict is something that we face throughout our lives, both in family, in social, as well as in the workspace. And I'm actually going to cover a lot on the professional front, the workspace, or the business front, that we face conflicts, but the same can be used across all relationships, because conflict is a universal word, not really pertaining to any industry or any sect of work that we do. So, a particular tool that is coming up quite frequently in the last few years is nonviolent communication. And this is something that I'm going to focus on in the next few minutes. And nonviolent communication has four particular quadrants to it. And the first quadrant of nonviolent communication is something called as observation. And this particular tenet focuses to a lot of listening. So when there is a conflict, we need to listen, observe, and try to understand everything that's happening around us. And it's a very keen sense of observation, which can only then lead on to us getting a much better grapple hold as to what the situation is, which gives us the second small quadrant, which is called as feeling. Now, keen sense of observation, a curious observation, leads to understanding what are the feelings that you're facing, what are the feelings that various parties are facing who are involved in the conflict. And it has to be done in a very dispassionate manner, without any feeling of judgment or prejudice around it. It has to be almost like you're stepping out of the scene, and like a third party trying to view into or peep into the various feelings of the people around, including you yourself. And this leads us finally to the third one, which is called as the need. So, observation leads to the feelings, leads to the need of each person who is there around you. And it's important that we try to understand the need. Many times, a lot of conflicts result in a lot of fighting amongst themselves, the lack of empathy. It's because people haven't observed, they haven't felt what others are feeling, and the underlying need has never ever been captured. And it's only when we go through the sequence of the listening, the feeling, and the need, can we then come to the request or to the talk of what is need to be said. So before we say anything, so NVC or nonviolent communication mentions that before we begin speech, there are three other elements to be done, which is a keen sense of listening, observation, understanding the various feelings without a sense of prejudice, thereby leading to the need, and only then do we go into the request mode. A small story on Viktor Frankl, who was a Nazi survivor in Europe, and he mentioned the story in his autobiography, where post the war, World War II, which was a kind of a depressing situation with a lot of people losing lives, property, businesses, entire selves. So there were a lot of these call centers, voluntary call centers, where people like Victor volunteered to help counsel people on the phone. And it was here that, at a particular midnight at around 2 a.m., there was a girl who was about to commit suicide, called him. And she said, I need to commit suicide, and this is the last call I'm making. So the only question which Viktor Frankl asked her was, why? Why do you need to commit suicide? And so she went on for around 30 minutes talking about the war and how she lost her parents, her sisters, and brothers in the war, in the camps. And she was a lone survivor, from the particular family. And there was no need for her to live anymore. And how she lost everything, her house and everything around it, etc. So this was, her story for 30 minutes, with all its elucidated details on how she went to the camps and what happened, etc. So at the end of 30 minutes, she again said, I need to commit suicide. So again, Viktor Frankl asked, anything more, any other more reasons. So the girl again then went on for the next 30 minutes to talk about her current life with no food, no water, no job, and no house over the head. Economy is depressing and extremely sad situations. She said, fine, even if I forget the past, my present also is nothing great to write home about, because there's nothing that I have, and there's really no need to survive. And she went on with this for next 30 minutes, so it's almost a 1 hour call. And Victor has only spoken three words till now. The first word was, why, and then the next word was anything more. And at the end of 1 hour, she again said she wanted to commit suicide, and he again asked the same question, anything else? And she again went on for 30 minutes about various other tortures that she's got in terms of the current relationships and how people have used her, and that she went on a complete uh, description of various issues that she's been facing, apart from the fact that she's lost her parents and brothers and sisters, and also the current situation of no financial income, etc. So she went on for the next 30 minutes. At the end of 30 minutes, she cut the call, saying that, that's it, I'm through. So of course there were no caller IDs. So once the call is cut, you forget about it, because there were many people committing suicide. And so Victor, he must have just prayed and slept off. It was 3:30 in the morning. And 2 weeks later, there was a party somewhere around, and that's what he says in his biography. And while he was sitting at the party, there was a girl who came up and met him and said, do you remember me? So Victor says, no, I don't think I've ever seen you before. And she told him that, I was that particular girl who you spoke, on the night of 2 weeks ago. So Viktor Frankl said, yes, the voice does seem familiar. You seem to be that girl. And of course, you are that one, because you wouldn't otherwise know that I spoke to somebody for 90 minutes. But hold a second, you were supposed to have committed suicide. So how come you're here after 2 weeks? And the girl told him that you're the reason why I didn't commit suicide. And he asked, but you spoke for 90 minutes. I hardly said three or four words in between. I never gave any solution. You mentioned, I remember you mentioned about your family and everybody dying. Before I couldn't say anything, you went on to the next topic, and I hardly said anything. Why do you want to give the credit to me? So this is what she said, that you're the only person who heard me out, and that hearing was seemed to be a purging out, a solution to all the problems. So it's so powerful, this act of hearing and the act of observing without your own involvement, that it itself can be a big healing act around it. So never underestimate this power of listening, the power of observation, without putting your own thoughts into it, because for all you know, it can be the answer to a lot of conflicts around yourself. So stimulus and response, and this is another of the sayings that he has: between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is a power to choose a response. And in the response lies our growth and freedom. So, if you look at it, there are three statements here. The first is stimulus and response, and the particular space between them. And in that particular space, so if you look at it, stimulus and response, it's a difference between reaction and response. And do we react to situations or are we responding? And that particular space between us, we have the power to choose our response. And depending on what you choose, lies your growth and freedom. So it's important to understand that we don't just react to situations, rather we respond in a very timely manner with a lot of pause and poise around it, which enables us to choose the right response around it. So let's look at the seven golden rules for nonviolent communication. The first is we should avoid the game of who's right, who's wrong. So in nonviolent communication, if you remember when you're looking at observation and you're trying to understand the feelings, you don't get into situations of who's right, who's wrong. You also try to avoid the Jekyll language, which is a terminology used for prejudice, having any prejudgment about any person or situation depending on on your past experience. The third golden rule of NVC is when you get to a feeling or when you get to a particular emotion around it, let's say, I am upset, you have to remove the word because. So, I am upset is a sentence in itself. I am angry, or I'm bored, or I'm frightened, I'm concerned because of something that should be removed. First, just let's look at the first, up to the point of what exactly is a feeling you're having right now. And it should be isolated from the environment, because when you give it to the environment, you're giving power to the environment. So I'm upset because this particular person shouted at me. I'm upset because somebody met with an accident. So you're actually giving power to the events around you. And the third rule is to remove that word because. Try to focus on giraffe language, which is opposite of jackal, and it's said to be a very kind language. The way you speak, the way you talk, has to be loaded with a lot of kind words. And in fact, it goes to the extent of saying that actions should be like a child feeding a duck, which would mean a lot of joy the child faces when he or she feeds a duck. So each action should have that sense of innocence and joy as we go around it. Try to understand if there is a jackal around you and if there is somebody, shouting or some conflict around you. Try to understand what are their feelings and needs. So it's very important because once you understand the need of a particular person or the feeling that they have, that leads to a lot of solutions around themselves. Never put a but in front of an angry person. So many times we come across this, we see a particular angry person and they are contradicting us or they're talking something, and the first thing you'll hear say, but this happened, but that happened. A but seems to put fuel into the fire. So it kind of makes the whole thing more aggravated. Instead, you should go back to point number six and try to understand what exactly are the feelings and needs of this particular person. And that leads us again to backwards towards observation. And that finally gets us to how we should respond in such a situation in a very calm and relaxed manner, like a child feeding a duck using giraffe language. So you look at the whole thing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can go back all the way in case you encounter, a particular conflict. You can go all the way back from, 7 to 1. So let's try to understand what are the seven needs that popular needs that you'll come across if you go deep down into the conversation, if you observe it well and you get the feelings around it, you will see that the first of the needs is a need to connect, and that's to get a connection. A lot of times conflicts happen because the person does not feel connected, and the need for connection is paramount. And remember, the moment you understand the need, the whole scenario changes, and even your view of the entire situation changes. There's a lot of empathy in it, probably some pity, and a feeling to help the other person, connect to whatever he's lost. The second is physical well-being. Needs no explanation. So if the person is feels he's under threat physically, that's another very strong need. The third is honesty, a feeling of being betrayed, a feeling of lies around him. So a feel need for being honest. The fourth is filled with joy and humor, probably just a need for play, needs a break from the seriousness of life, and there's an underlying need in the person for some sort of a pause and play and joy and humor in life. The fifth is peace. Too much noise around, and the person, or probably it could be even you, are looking at peace. The sixth is autonomy, independence, without being linked to anybody else or any particular event. The need to be free. Freedom is one of the most important needs of a human being, autonomous. And the last one is clarity, a need to be transparent, clear, and clarity in mind and approach, as inside, so outside. So these are the seven needs, beginning with the connection or the physical well being, the honesty, play, joy, or humor, peace, the need to be free, and clarity. And this also leads us to the feelings. When the needs are satisfied, when those seven needs are satisfied, you have the feelings of being affectionate, engaged in the work, confident, excited to go ahead, inspired, grateful, and refreshed. Now, this is how we really tackle conflict. So, when there is conflict, you really need to understand what you need to observe and listen very well. What exactly is the feelings going on in each person's mind, including my own self. And once you understand these particular feelings, you come to the need. And when you tackle the need in some manner or the other, that's when the whole situation changes to become much more affectionate, engaged, confident, excited, inspired, grateful, and refreshed. And that's the transformation of the conflict that's there around you. So, again, to summarize, the first point, of course, is observation, which we mentioned it down. And the second, it leads to understanding of the feelings of various people around you, including yourself. And that leads to, and this is the most difficult part, we need to really understand what are the needs. And once you understand that, that's where the arrow goes from top to down. Then it's the most easiest to request or respond to the situation. Many times, if you do the first three quadrants well, sometimes a lot of things is tackled like Viktor Frankl right in the first quadrant. If you just observe as a third party, just listen, that itself can be a solution to a lot of conflicts. If not, go to the next one of feeling, and then next one, understanding the need. And many times the conflict is resolved if you just do the first three. You may not need not go to the fourth one at all, which is the request or the way you respond to the situation. So this, in essence, is it's developed and derived with Marshall Rosenberg, as the name goes, and it's become very powerful, a powerful way of communication, a powerful way of tackling conflict, and a powerful way of building relationships. So I invite each of you all to understand and try to practice this. The theory is very simple. What it requires really is practice, and if you really practice well, This can lead to a lot of results and a lot of peace and happiness around yourself. So, with that, I'll kind of open it up to question answers. If there are any, we can tackle it as we go on. So, thank you so much for your time and patience. I saw the chat box, it looks good. I think hopefully we have given some food for thought in the coming week. And looking forward to see you next week at the same time with a brand new topic. So, thank you so much and have a great day ahead of you. Thank you. Bye bye.